Miss Isolda asked me to mention that Caleb has been admitted to a hospital for at least a few weeks. And in short, she said if anybody wants more details to ask her about it, which is excellent because I'm not good with details. But thank you, George, for keeping that situation in mind while you prayed. So Genesis chapter 8, there was a big flood. That's right. Good class so far. There was a big flood in Genesis chapter 8. Now, you read some from Genesis chapter 9 and 10 and 11, and I can think of at least 4 changes to the world at the time of the flood. Anyone? What changes do you remember reading about? What changes do you remember at all about going on at the flood?
It was very populated, and then not so much.
That's a big change.
Yeah, I didn't have that one in mind. You know, the funny thing is this. Many years ago, John was up here teaching something. I forget what it was. But I said, well, what about this thought? And he said, I didn't include it because I thought it was obvious. And now he just turned it around on me. Okay, very good. All right, so one change is the fear of you and the terror of you, chapter 9, verse 2, would be on every beast of the earth and every bird of the sky. This seems very much to imply there was a different situation before, and now it's changed. Man always ruled, but now there's rule with fear. I don't know how that works. Ask Isolda about the details, or somebody else, right? Not only that, but man, how long they lived, right? The chapter 5, the times in chapter 5, the lifespans in chapter 5 are very different from the lifespans in chapter 11. By the way, there is a Babylonian record of kings. I don't know if any of you have ever read it, seen it, and the numbers that they have coincide only in that there were people that lived tremendously long lives, and then after a time, after a certain event, those people, the people that lived in that time, their lifespans shortened dramatically. And what do you think they have as happening in between? Flood. So, long lifespans, flood, short lifespans. Now, the lifespans they have are 10,000 years. You know, one guy lived 10,000 years. I don't know how. Poor guy, I think. Okay.
Question already.
Oh, dear.
So the fear of you and the dread of you should be upon every beast. You're under the impression that before that, every animal was, my word, tame?
Seems to be something more like that.
Okay. Semi-domesticated?
So also in 1 Peter chapter 3, let me revise that. 2 Peter chapter 3. Mockers will come with their mocking. Verse 4, where is the promise of his coming? Verse 5, when they maintain this, it escapes their notice that by the word of God the heavens existed long ago, and the earth was formed out of water and by water, through which the world at that time was destroyed, being flooded with water. But by his word, the present heavens and earth are being reserved for fire. So there was a world that was destroyed, and now there is a present heavens. We live in the present heavens. The point is that Peter's language, in the King James Version, the world that then was, being overflowed with water, perished, and the heavens and the earth, which are now. The world that then existed perished, the heavens and the earth, which are now. The world at that time was destroyed, the present heavens and the earth being reserved for fire. The world at that time it was destroyed, the present heavens. So there's our world, our earth that we live on. And it underwent some significant change, so much that there's the earth that's now, and then there's a different earth before that. So it's a radical change. I don't know, I wasn't there for it. but it's a big change. Also, there may have been a change in the atmosphere. If you look in Genesis chapter 1, in Genesis chapter 1, it says in verse 6, let there be an expanse, Genesis 1:6, in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters. God made the expanse, separated the waters which were below the expanse from the waters which were above the expanse. Verse 8, God called the expanse heaven. Again, I don't know exactly what's going on here, but it might be something like this. Now, we're not used to seeing that, right? No, whatever it is, if we could take a picture of what it was and compare it to a picture of what is now, it seems to have changed. In Genesis chapter 7, it said in verse 12, Genesis 7 verse 12, in the 600th year of Noah's life, the second month of the 17th day of the month, on the same day all the fountains of the deep burst open. Sounds pretty neat. I wouldn't want to be there. And it also says the floodgates, or the windows, of the sky were opened, and then at the end of the flood, or midway through the flood, however you want to look at it, the Lord will stop the floodgates of what was above. So, a couple things from this. After our last class, John came up to me, and I had said something in the class which he just wanted me, he didn't say clarify this please, Lee, but I'm feeling as though I need to clarify. He said, you do believe that the flood covered the earth entirely? Yes, I do. Right. It says, the water prevailed and increased greatly, and it's 20 cubits above the mountains. I don't know exactly how that happened, but I take it by faith that it happened. Yes, it covered. In fact, anytime there is a localized flood, then if this were a localized flood, and God promised never to flood locally again, then every time we have a localized flood, he would be breaking his promise. So we were at the National Space and Rocket Museum in Huntsville, Alabama, and we went in to watch a movie that was fascinating, full of garbage. Don't listen, just watch. What happened is they took a guess, that's what it is, it's an educated guess, but what the atmosphere on Saturn actually looks like. And so you're in a spaceship. Ooh, it's pretty neat. And you're descending onto Saturn. And as you descend, you go through the upper canopy of atmosphere. And then, if you're in the spaceship, all of a sudden there's the upper canopy, and then you are below the upper canopy. And to look up is really weird. No, I don't know. So these are not the Earth. These are people's guesses at what Saturn looks like. But my point only in doing this is imagine living there. In fact, they said that Saturn rains glass because of the temperature of the certain chemical. When it gets, the temperature of the atmosphere is minus 250 degrees Fahrenheit or whatever it is, and so it rains glass. Really weird. I wouldn't want to be there, right? But picture living there, okay. And I understand that the expanse above and the waters above and the waters below are separated by the expanse called the heavens, and they can see the sun, and they can see the moon. So it's not a perfectly, solid or non-transparent. My only point was, when we descended through there, I was thinking, it was weird back then. It was different than it is now. I don't know how different, but it was different than it is now. While we were there, I want to point out something about how people think. So, on our trip in the movie, we went to the sun. It was pretty neat. And then they started, what?
Nice tan.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Have you been to the sun? I know you shook your heads because you're like, plug your ears. You don't know if you've been to the sun. Did you take your boys to the sun? All right, well, this is what happened. This is what they'll say. Now, the details are not exactly important, and I forget them. But they said there was a dot. There was a speck. And then this speck collected another speck to it. This is the creation of the sun, how the sun began. And then they started saying, and then there's this picture of things going on. You can tell it's a gravitational field. And then they say, probably specks, spect. Is there a K in spect when you make up this new word? Okay. And then the specks got together, and one of them exploded off, and he became the Earth. And so probably the speck exploded. Okay, now all these are details that I completely forgot. And then probably the other scientific explanation happened. Okay. And then this is what happened. So that was actually the movie, that's part of the movie. In the meantime, there is a hostess, a woman down talking. She's a young girl, she's interested in science, you know, she's volunteering. Okay, so the narration in the movie stops, and now the movie keeps going, but the narration stops of the explanation of how the sun was created. And then she said, and I quote, "Now that we," what do you think she said right there? Exactly. Okay, no. And my point to my children was, this is exactly what they do. What have they done there? What have they done? They have...
They've bait and switched. I mean, honestly, in a way, you know, let's frame it one way, and then let's alter your attention and...
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what they do this time and again, and this is their method. I was talking with a young man down there. You have to look for patterns. You don't have to, but if you do look for patterns, you'll know that Satan works the same way over and over and over and over and over again. And what he's done here is he has left. Anybody want to say anything? You probably won't say the same words I will. He has left statement, command, example, and necessary inference. Right. He has left. So I am reminded of 1 Corinthians chapter 1, where Paul says, the word of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved it is the power of God. It is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and the cleverness of the clever I will set aside. Where is the wise man? Where is the scribe? Where is the debater of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? The wisdom of the world leaves statement, command, example, necessary inference from the Bible, even to what we can observe. Now, I realize we have to make some guesses. And so what they did is they made some guesses. I'm not okay with the guesses they made. But let's just pretend for a minute. I'm okay, yeah, you've got to make some guesses. No, you don't. God created it, spoke it into existence. But there are other things where it doesn't reveal to us explicitly, how did God do this? All right, let's make some guesses. And so they make some guesses, and then they say, we know. And then you've gone too far, right? So just beware of it and watch it. That's a pattern that I have observed. Anybody else comment or question on that? Whoops, that's not going off. Okay. Genesis chapter 9. And God blessed Noah and his sons, and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. I have two words for this, sad and glad. Do you recognize that expression there?
Adam and Eve, right? That's what he told Adam and Eve.
He told Adam and Eve the exact same thing.
Kind of the animals too.
Yes, yes, yes. Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. So why am I sad?
Because the old one is...
It didn't work. They didn't do it. Because sin happened. We know the story. Sin happened. And here, he's got to tell them to start over. This is where we're glad.
Because he gave it another chance.
How many times have you had to wake up the next day and start over because you failed? You know, if you wake up the next day and continue from where you were, then you're not starting over, right? How many times do you wake up and start over? I don't think I've had a day where I haven't started, right? You know, you wake up and you start over every day, but God gives them a chance. What a loving God. So I'm glad that we have God here saying, again, start over, you got another chance. I find it interesting that he didn't require more of them. Humans. He put humans on the earth. He said, be fruitful and multiply. They totally messed up. He destroys the earth. He allows the same humans to be on the earth, and he says to them, be fruitful and multiply, and this time go to the moon. No, he does. It's the same thing, which I find interesting, because anytime we really have to do more, it's as a result of my own sin, right? My sin got me into this situation where I'm worse off now than I was before. So if there's more to be done, it's only because of my fault, not God's fault, right? Okay. God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. The fear of you and the terror of you will be on every beast of the earth and every bird of the sky. Now, this is an argument from silence. The validity of this argument, if it is valid, rests on the idea that you may have expected to read something like this prior to now, and we never do. Okay? So he says it here for the first time. It seems to be the change. There's a change that happens here.
Well, that's because now Noah's going to eat them.
Another change. Right. Yeah, this seems to begin the change.
He didn't eat them.
Right.
He might have petted the cow, but
Yes.
he didn't eat the cow. Now he's going to eat the cow.
He may have even milked the cow, but he did not eat the cow.
But early on, when they were coming onto the ark, there were 2 of every creature, except the clean ones. There were 7 pair. What is it made them clean? It wasn't that he could eat them then, it was just a definitional.
Right.
God said these are the clean ones.
Right. Oh, you're asking?
Well,
No, you're telling.
half.
Yeah, no, it's right. God just said it. Right. Not to do with eating.
But
Which,
we're more familiar with the Mosaic dietary laws, where the same phrase is, these are the ones you can eat, the
Right.
ones that are clean.
right.
But that's not necessarily what is being talked about.
No.
Seven pairs.
Right. Although I think it is. I think that a passage like Genesis chapter 7, where they come marching, here come the clean ones and the not clean ones, only has, it really drives home that the dietary laws are not necessarily about, oh, this is unhealthy to eat pig. Which, you read a commentary, and it's going to say, well, of course we know that it's unhealthy to eat pigs. Really? I didn't know that. But you read that kind of stuff all the time. And that might have been true. There might have been some, okay, God is helping them prevent disease. Okay, maybe. But that doesn't explain why clean and unclean, if they touch an unclean animal, where do they go? To the doctor? No, they go to the priest. This is spiritually. And the same in Genesis chapter 7. God just said, he said, this is unclean, this is clean. And before it has anything to do with eating, like you're saying. I didn't answer you, I just repeated you, so. Do I still get credit for something?
Yeah.
Okay. The fear of you and the terror of you will be on every beast of the earth and every bird of the sky, with everything that creeps on the ground and all the fish of the sea. Into your hand they are given. Now, Psalm 8 will tell us that this is a blessing. And it always has been a blessing since Genesis 1, not just since Genesis 9. Psalm 8, verse 1, O Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth, who have displayed your splendor above the heavens. Then in verse 3, he starts talking about man. When I consider your heavens and the work of your fingers, verse 4, what is man that you take thought of him? So the psalmist says, God, you're great, your creation is great. And then he says, God, man is pretty great too, only because of what you have done. You have made him, verse 5, a little lower than God. You crown him with glory and majesty. You make him to rule over the work of your hands. You have put all things under his feet, all sheep and oxen, all the beasts of the field, birds of the heavens, fish of the sea, whatever passes through the paths of the seas. O Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth. A point I've made from this before is this guy's in a good mood because of his position. He is not a clam. He is not a fish. He is not a soaring bird or a cow. He is a human. So if you're ever having a bad day, ever have a bad day? Did you have a bad day today? No? Well, you can still think of this. Right? You know, I'm not, but the point is, it's a blessing to be a human being. It is a blessing to be a human being. Now, can you think of anybody who says we're not blessed? Now, they won't say it that way, but they'll say that a human is nothing special. Now, who says that? The evolutionist.
People who don't believe God.
Right.
They'll say that we're just animals.
That's right. The evolutionist makes us just animals. What does the activist make us? Less than. That's right. And so, you know, we have some young minds that are absorbing all of God's creation, and they say, wow, there was a dinosaur and 72 dangerous animals in Asia. You come over to our house, that's what you're watching these days. And every time, almost, like 90% of the time, so today we're going to watch 6 animals, because there are 6 animals in each segment. And at the end of each every animal, not at the end of the show, but they always talk about how the animals are losing their...
Habitat. They're threatened by us because we're the worst animal.
We're the worst animal. We're the lesson animal. And so I have to say, is it okay? You know, I'm not saying go abuse the earth. But because man is... Why? Why are animals losing their habitat? Because humans are expanding. Oh, I wonder where it says that humans should expand. Right? We're just doing what God says to. And so I have to imprint in all of our minds and remind ourselves, hey, look, we're just doing, don't, you know, pay attention to what God says through these animals, not what these people say about it.
Well, nature is all out there trying to kill us at every
Yes,
turn.
I've said that too.
I mean,
Yeah.
with weather or
Yeah.
poisonous animals and all kinds
Yeah.
of stuff.
And so it's okay when we fight back.
Do it.
Right. The snake tried to bite me. I'm going to shoot the snake now. You know, that's okay. They're losing their habitat. Yes. Right. Bam. Verse 3. Every moving thing that is alive shall be food for you. I give all to you as I have, or as I gave the green plant. Now you remember, you know, Genesis chapter 1, you read that. So as Gary pointed out, I think it was earlier, there's a big change here. Now they are eating the cow. But as John pointed out a minute ago, in the law of Moses, by the way, notice what it says here in verse 3. How many moving things may they eat? Every.
Yeah.
But in the law of Moses, not every.
Yeah, but even here, there was clean and unclean.
Yes, but they can eat them all.
Well, you have to make an assumption there.
Every moving thing that is alive shall be food for you.
Don't you have to take this in a little bit like Paul says, all things are lawful for me?
Yeah, but I mean that's always a given.
I realize I'm making an assumption here that maybe the unclean ones they were not to eat.
Yeah, I don't know why. I mean, every moving thing. I'm taking this at face value. I have. That's all I got to say
Okay.
about that. Yeah, I get your point. I don't think it's. I am unprepared to say that point is valid here. Okay.
There was a lot of rituals and cleanliness associated with their lifestyle, the Hebrews, and particularly their eating habits
Right.
that are not mentioned here.
Right.
That weren't animal specific.
Right.
The washing and all that.
Yeah.
So that's right.
Even so, right now, today, 2020, or almost 2020, real close, we may eat every moving thing that is alive. So, 2 things from this. I know that under the law of Moses they could not eat every living. And maybe back then, maybe it's also back then, but I know that under the law of Moses they couldn't. So, and I know that we may, And so, what I understand from this is that what's lawful at one time may not be lawful at another time. And what's lawful for one person may not be lawful for another person. And I can understand something about this, about how I try to think consistently. And that is, if somebody says, hey, let's have instrumental music, and they say, well, David did it. Well, David did do it. But what's lawful at one time for one person may or may not be lawful for another time in another person, and I've got to approach things differently. That's only the short point there. Another point is, God has absolute control. If the government came in here right now and said, you cannot eat with a plastic straw, what would you say? You've gone too far. But if God comes in and says, you may not eat a pig, what do you say?
Yes, sir.
That's right. That's right. God has absolute control. Now, for us, we are freed to eat. But is there still control? Is there an overriding principle that would govern what we eat?
Yes.
Right? Romans 14.
Aren't we still supposed to abstain from blood?
Yes.
Yes.
Right. I haven't got to that verse yet. That's verse 5,
He's
I
getting
believe.
there.
Right. So, right, we can't eat blood, so God is still in control. Don't eat blood, right? But even the things that all things are lawful, now, we definitely have
Right.
all things are lawful, because that's the context of this discussion. All things are lawful, but not all things are profitable. Yes, go ahead and eat steak, but not if it's going to cause somebody else to sin. Then you don't have freedom. So we have this, we have the freedom to do a whole bunch of stuff, but we are bound, we are restricted in a general principle of what is going to help God and His kingdom. Help God, if you know what I mean. Just because something, so verse 4, only you shall not, I said verse 5, it's verse 4. Only you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is, its blood. George, you want to make a point? I think you want to make a point. Or,
So are we not allowed to eat raw food? Raw meat? That's a question on the point.
not
Or
if you
is it
drain the blood out of it.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. That's, you slit a pig's throat and then you hang it upside down and you wait how long do you wait? A day? You can't wait a day. Depends on the temperature.
That's a good point.
Right? Okay. So, which I find interesting because just because something is able to be drunk and able, do any of you know anybody who drinks blood or eats blood? Yeah, especially over where you come from. Over there, it's everywhere. Give me some blood sausage, I want it. I think I ate some sometime. I didn't know what it was, but I said, wow, this has got a lot of fluid in it, and it's red. And so I stopped, actually. I stopped because I said, I don't know what it is.
When you put the fork in it.
Did you grow up eating? Did you eat it? Yeah. Did you like it? Somewhat. Right. We have this friend. He says to me, this is what he says. Lee, what does the Bible say about eating blood? I said, well, Acts chapter 15 says we may not. He said, that's what I thought. But I do it anyway. Didn't get very far with that guy, So it is able to be eaten. But just because it is able to be eaten doesn't mean you may eat it. Anybody, do you remember that airplane that went down in South America? You know what I'm talking about? The airplane went down in the top of the mountains. Huh?
Soccer team?
Yeah, the soccer team. And what did they end up doing?
Yep.
Do you think that was lawful?
They drained the blood first.
I'll tell you that when I combine 1 Corinthians 15, there is one flesh of animal. All flesh is not the same. There's one flesh of man, another flesh of beasts, another of birds, and another of fish. With Genesis chapter 9, I've given you every moving thing. He's not talking about humans there. He's talking about creatures. Okay. just because you may eat something doesn't necessarily mean it's lawful, right? I will point this out also, because I heard this right in this building. Alcohol, you can drink it. Yeah, I can drink gasoline. Okay? Now, you say, well, obviously you can't drink gasoline because it'll hurt you. Uh-huh. And thank you for making the point.
That's right.
Right. But my point is, I am convinced that just because you may or are able to, alcohol is a liquid, and it goes down smoothly. Just because it can and it goes down smoothly, that doesn't mean we necessarily may. Because just because something is able to be drunk doesn't necessarily mean we have authority to drink it. I'll make that point here and then move on unless somebody else wants to comment or question on this. Acts 15, you can comment or question on it. I'm just pointing out that Acts 15, this is written and recorded in the old law, but took place before the old law, right? So Genesis 9, Moses, that's written in the old law, but it's actually took place before the old law. It superseded or was at the same time contemporary with the old law. And then in Acts chapter 15, you remember in verse 29, it says, abstain from things sacrificed to idols, from blood, and things strangled, and from fornication. So this rule still applies now. Don't eat this blood. Okay, comment or question? A horseshoe crab's blood is blue? Is that what we discovered the other day? A horseshoe.
Really?
Purple? Blue. Blue. Yep. Okay. So stay away from blue blood. There are new conditions here. I'm going to keep going. If you have a point to make, let me know. Surely, verse 5, surely I will require your lifeblood. From every beast I will require it. From every man, from every man's brother I will require the life of man. So if somebody murders, or even if I see what's going on. Even if a beast murders, kills a man, then the beast is killed. And we'll see that later on in the law of Moses also. Verse 6, whoever sheds man's blood, by man his blood shall be shed. So this is not vengeance, this is justice.
Right.
Now somebody might get confused
Right.
and do both at the same time. In God's eyes, it'll be both vengeance and justice. And one of them he'd have to repent of. For in the image of God he made man. So don't murder man. 2 reasons. In the image of God he made him. So that's a personal assault on God. Reason number 2, as for you, be fruitful and multiply. Well, it's hard to be fruitful and multiply when you're out there killing what's supposed to be fruitful and multiplying. Populate the earth and abundantly and multiply it. Comments or questions here?
Well, this always generates discussion about who carries this out.
Yeah.
Because who's going to carry this out?
Then,
Yeah,
your brother.
the godly person is going to carry that out.
I would say anybody would. I mean, a godly person will feel obligated to.
Because he follows the law.
Oh, I see. Right. A godly person may be the one doing this.
He's the one that has to kill them.
Yep.
The one who's...
Right. So that has relevance for us today.
Yes. And,
Right.
I mean, this always generates all kinds of discussion, because you're not supposed to kill people, and,
Yeah.
Who, I mean, think about back then.
You're not supposed to murder people.
He told Noah and his sons, and, I mean, everybody else,
Right.
who would listen thereafter. And the ungodly person, by and large, is not going to carry this out, is he? I mean,
Usually not, but
yeah.
I
So-
get you.
So, there you go.
Right. I wouldn't limit it to, well, the only one that's going to do it is the
Right,
godly
but
person.
I mean-
But I'm allowing,
Yeah.
it's requirement.
Right.
In fact, in a perfect world, who would be godly?
Everybody.
Everyone.
Right, so there wouldn't be a killer.
Right, there wouldn't be killing to begin with. Right. And here comes one murderer. Cain comes along.
Here comes Lamech, so we better
Right.
get rid of him before he spreads.
Right. Okay. Again, this is why I stated this earlier. This is written. This is not part of the law of Moses. This is contained, recorded in the law of Moses, or what we call the law of Moses, but this is, what he says here is part and parcel with verses 8 through 17, which is the rainbow sign. And God says, look, for all generations, in verse 12, for all successive generations, or every generation, or however you want to look at it. So including through the time of the law of Moses, and including even right now.
And basically, it's a feature of the patriarchal age, right?
Yes.
It's expected to be.
The part about who does it.
Well, everything in here
Yeah.
fits the
Yep.
descendants of Noah.
Yep.
Until something else is carved out for the descendants of Abraham.
Right. Well, but
It's not
still,
Moses and all.
so I get what you're saying, but let's be careful about saying until. Because when the law of Moses comes along, the descendants of Moses will still have to do this. Or
Right.
descendants of Abraham, excuse me,
Right.
will still have to do this. And more. And everybody else will still have to do this. We don't when we say the patriarchal age, that stops at, I guess, well, we should do this again, but when it goes into Exodus. But that doesn't mean this law stops when they go into Exodus or come out Egypt, when they come out of Egypt. This is for what we would call Gentiles. This is for everybody.
This is for everybody for all time.
Right. Right.
This is a good illustration of when God gives us a sign, what society tends to do with it over
Yeah.
time. For all the demanding signs, you look at the oldest one we've got, and
Yep.
it's been
Sad.
abused is a mild way of.
You notice that though. So, save the animals. It looks kind of innocent. But it ends up driving them the opposite of what God wants. And you find that over and over and over and over again. And I'm sure the first person who ever said save the animals was a great person and had no nefarious, and the same, even the same one who says, I'll grant, the one who says, just use the pronoun they want. I'll bet you one of them out there is not nefarious. They're just trying to be kind. They really are trying to be kind. But then it takes on a life of its own. It takes on a life of its own, and it becomes the very opposite. All these things that in and of themselves, all by themselves right there, can look innocent. It may be innocent, but it tends to develop this against God. And so that just drives home, we got to stay with God and not let, it's okay. It's not what God wants, but it's okay. No. We don't get to go there. Okay. Anything else through verse 7? I don't claim to have covered it all. Verse 8, then God spoke to Noah and his sons, saying, behold, I myself do establish my covenant with you. I write down the new covenant. This is the first time the word covenant is used in the Bible. And with your...
Not the first time the concept is used.
No. Say it again?
Not the first time
Right.
the concept is used, otherwise it wouldn't be a new one.
Well, I wrote down new, but yes, you're right. That's...
Establishment covenant, yeah, it does seem.
No, but it's not the first time the concept is God says, look, I have a covenant for you. Don't eat from there, and I'll let you live. That's the word isn't used. That's why I wrote new there, though. Good point. We know about this. I just want to read again, verse 11. I establish my covenant with you, and all flesh shall never again be cut off by the water of the flood. Neither shall there again be a flood to destroy the earth. Again, if Genesis 7, 8, and 9 was a local flood, then every time there's a local flood and one person dies, God has broken his promise here. Verse 12, this is the sign of the covenant which I am making between me and you and every living creature that is with you. For all successive generations, or all generations, I set my bow in the cloud. It shall be a sign of covenant between me and the earth. So every day we walk out, every time we walk out, we see that rainbow. We say this is still in effect, and God is not going to destroy the earth with a cloud, or excuse me, with water. Verse 17, God said to Noah, this is the sign of the covenant which I have established between me and all flesh that is on the earth. Is God going to destroy the earth?
Yeah.
So, is it popular nowadays? So little Greta, what's her name? She's running all over. And what is she saying? What's her major problem with us adults? That we have robbed her.
Destroy the earth, there'll be nothing left for her.
Yet we've robbed the children's future. By the way, so the point is this: who's in control?
God.
God is in control. And to tell a child that is evil. It's evil to tell a child, you have no future. I'm sorry, the earth is not going to be around anymore. That's disgusting to put that kind of thought. Okay, so go green, go green, be green. How many carbon footprints do you put out every day? Big ones. That sounds a little funny. But you get the point, right? And so you need to buy a hybrid car, and I need to sell my Excursion right now so that we can what? What will we do?
Wait a minute, you gotta sell all the cars, you gotta start walking.
Yeah, so what will we do when we do that? Why would we do that? So that we can
Save the planet.
ensure the planet's future, what?
Feel smug.
Yes, right. Ensure the planet's future, right? So we have to, but what does that assume? The assertion is we want to make sure our planet stays
As soon
around.
as we've got the power to
Yeah,
destroy it to
that's
begin
right.
with.
Right. And then, to illustrate how far they go, what should we start doing with extra children we have around?
Yeah.
So what have they done? They have turned the creation into a god. They worship the creation, right? So it's not, I'm getting beat left and right. So a few years ago, in this building, I asked somebody what would be important to grow up to do. And the answer was this: a great thing would be to cure pollution. That was somebody here. No, but they didn't know better. The reason they didn't know better is because they hadn't been instructed at home, and they were being instructed otherwise elsewhere. Okay? So, but that assumes that we're in control. So no, God's in control of this. I'm not saying abuse the world. I'm not saying go dump all your plastic in my pond or anything like that. But understand that God's in control, and it will end exactly when He wants it to.
That's okay.
It might be miserable for us between now and then because of what we've done. That's okay. But it'll still be livable.
I mean, the thing that's killing me is that, to some extent,
pollution.
adults have destroyed her future.
She has.
Well,
Yeah, no, the adults.
The adults
All
have
the people
destroyed
who
her
said
future.
that.
They absolutely have.
Yeah.
Because they're brainwashing this
Right.
child.
So it's crazy. All right, so in verse 18, now the sons of Noah who came out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Ham was the father of Canaan. These three were the sons of Noah, and from these the whole earth was populated. Now you know what happens when Noah comes out of the ark, or by now. Noah began farming and planted a vineyard. I find this interesting. In chapter 9, up until now, we have God doing things, and it's great. And the first time he mentions a man, it's a failure. But again, that's the way I am. Every day, I got to start over, and it doesn't take me long before I've made a mistake. Noah began farming and planted a vineyard. drank the wine and became drunk and uncovered himself inside his tent. Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers outside. But Shem and Japheth took the garment and laid it upon their shoulders and walked backward and covered their nakedness of their father, and their faces were turned away, so they did not see their father's nakedness. When Noah woke from his wine, he knew what his youngest son had done, and so he said, "Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants, he shall be to his brothers." He said also, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant, and may God enlarge Japheth, and let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant." Noah lived 350 years after the flood, so all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. Now, when Moses writes Genesis chapter 9, where are they?
The wilderness.
In the wilderness, somewhere probably. Where are they not?
Promised land.
Where are they about to be?
Promised.
This would be a good explanation of, hey, why are we getting this land anyway? What did we do? Well, y'all Israelites didn't do anything. 400 and plus years ago, this little event happened, and Noah was able to see into the future, or whatever. I don't understand how it all worked. He, by inspiration, made this prophecy. So it is a fulfillment of a prophecy. I will point out, what does this say about nakedness? Or let me rephrase. Oh, it's just a bunch of guys. Just a bunch of guys with guys. Or just a bunch of girls. And it's only girls in that room. It's only guys in that room. Well, this says it don't matter. It doesn't matter, right? The nakedness is still nakedness. Now, I understand there are going to be times when that, you go to the doctor, the purpose matters. We say purpose matters. But I would suggest that we have added a lot of purposes that are not biblical. That's all I'll say about that. What?
Is Noah's behavior here sinful at this point? Do we know that to be true?
Oh, you mean the drinking?
Yeah.
I don't think I could say, no, I couldn't say we know that it is. I think it was. I don't think we could say we know that it is. The only thing I would say in a situation like this, I know you want to say something, is that the first time we ever read about being drunk, it's not exactly in a very good situation. That says enough. But what it is, that wasn't your thought, was it?
No, I mean, I was just asking
No.
if there was something I missed.
No. Well, I'm sure there was, but...
But that's not necessarily.
Right, that's not right. Okay. I have some more thoughts, but for now, I'm not going to read chapter 10, but it has the sun's going here, and the sun's going there, and the other sun's going other places, and it takes a lot more in-depth study than we're going to go into right now, but a lot of how they draw maps like this is by chasing names of the people and realizing, okay, so there's an idea that, the idea is this, the consonants carry the meaning. Consonants carry the meaning. And so you can have the same word in different languages, and you'll hear it. You'll hear the word, but they have a different diphthong there. Well, but listen for the consonants, okay? And so when you start going from all these different languages into different languages, but you can still see, oh, this guy's name is a town over there. And so there are different ways. And also in the Bible, it talks about the Jews of Ashkenaz, or the people, not the Jews. It talks about the peoples of Ashkenaz coming down from the north. So they dig through the Bible, look for hints like that. I know you can't see that one, but I hope you can see this one. Right? That's generally what happened. Ham went to Africa, and you can remember that Africa kind of looks like a ham, maybe. Japheth went to Europe, and Shem goes toward the east.
You,
What's that?
the European arrow is white. The Asian one is yellow. And the African one is brown.
Don't say anything. Also, the only point I'll make from this is Acts 17 says, and you all know this, I was born way over here in 1973. In fact, the girl who's down doing the science hosting, she says, when were you born? Or no, when are you guys? Because we're traveling in time, you see. We're in 2029 or something like that. And so I yelled, 1973! And I threw her off because she wasn't ready for that. Because later on, she had to talk about cell phones. And in 1973, there were no cell phones. And she caught herself and she said, car phones. She was clearly very young, although there were car phones in 1973. So why was I born? You know, look, they all went and did that, and then, you know, now in 2020, this is also over here. It's been over there. God who made the world and all things in it. Verse 26 of Acts 17, He made from one man every nation of mankind to live on all the face of the earth, having determined their appointed times and the boundaries of their habitation. And the older I get, the more I'm thankful that I didn't live there. You know, I'm grateful for that. Especially the darkness. And what I mean is, we know what God wants. We know what He wants. We don't have to question, am I in living like that? You know, a husband and a wife live together, and one of them doesn't know if they're pleasing the other. That's devastating. Especially if it goes on and on and on. That will destroy. They'll become insecure. They'll internally fall apart. Guy, man, or woman. And it's the same with, that's just an illustration of a person who lived, who really cared, and lived under the God of the Old Testament, as it were, during that time, but didn't have the Old Testament. Now, they would have confidence, you know, that's what Romans chapter 1 talks about. But I'm glad I was born in 1973 so I can understand things. And verse 27 says that they would seek God. That has always been the plan. Even back then, every single person born, ever, God put them there, God controlled it, and God said, now come and look for me. I'll be here. Okay, I'm all done. Comments or questions on these things? Thank you for your work, and we'll pick up in Genesis chapter 11 next week, Lord willing. Well, next week is Thanksgiving, and I'm not sure who will be here or how many people won't be here, so we might just have a singing or something like that. Don't know yet, unless you all discuss that and everybody. Okay, so we'll talk about it again. George, song?